Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with Steve Grunlan, owner of Stone Arch Services, a Minneapolis based IT recruiting firm. Steve has nearly 15 years of IT recruiting experience and is well connected in the Twin Cities area. We are excited to talk to him about recruiting trends and his work here in Minnesota. We might even talk about cycling today. Welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Thanks, Dietrich. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So, first, we always like to get started by letting our listeners hear a little bit more about you. So why don't you talk about where you're from and kind of your background that's gotten you to where you are today?
Absolutely. I am a local Minneapolis-based guy. Have spent most of my adult life in the Twin Cities. Originally was born out in the state of New York. I've lived in 5 different states and probably 12 to 15 different homes over the time. My dad is a pastor and a college professor, and so we kind of moved around quite a bit when I was younger. Went to college here locally in town at a small private school out in Waconia called Crown College, and then have spent my whole adult life here in the Twin Cities. Actually, originally started out thinking I was going to be a youth pastor. So I was a youth ministry major at Crown. Did some nonprofit work for the first couple of years of my career and decided that that wasn't the path that I would take. Did a few different things. I was the director of admissions for National American University here in town for a number of years, and actually was part of the marketing team that put together that One Day, One Night commercial campaign, which was very effective and still used today. And then in 2005, I had completed a master's program and didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I had a buddy that worked at a recruiting company here in town, and he referred me to the owner, and I interviewed and was hired, and I guess the rest is history. So I've been doing it here in town for the last 16 years. I worked for 2 different firms, one doing full-time perm IT placement, and the second doing a contract IT placement. And now I've been in business for myself going into my 6th year. So all local work. I focus exclusively on the Twin Cities market and have made close to 600 local placements here with IT professionals here in town during that 16-year period.
That's awesome. And what do you attribute to your success? So since 2005, you got started in an industry that you weren't very familiar in. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are people out there that haven't, they've thought about the recruiting industry, but they haven't thought about it specifically within IT.
Yep.
What kind of attributes did you have to be successful in that arena?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think anybody starts out in life thinking they want to be an IT recruiter. You kind of fall into it, or the profession finds you. I really, I guess the first thing I would say about any success that anybody has, and specifically me in my life and my career with IT recruiting, was I had people that invested in me and believed in me and were just nice to me. I mean, at the end of the day, there was a guy named Rick Delorier out of Recruiters in Minnesota who hired me, and I had no recruiting experience. I was a total greenhorn, and he looked at me right in the eye when he hired me, and he said, "You know what? You're going to be the best recruiter I've ever hired." And I was very skeptical at first, but you know what? I went in and I ended up setting a lot of records for Rick at that company, and he was my biggest advocate, and he really, what I appreciated, he kind of threw me to the wolves. I didn't get a lot of hand-holding or coddling. He basically said, this is kind of some, ways that I've been successful doing this business, and, you're welcome to take or leave what you want, but this is what you got to do to be successful. And I just really took off, and I felt like my plug found the right socket, as it were, with Rick, and was with him for 5 years, and again, with a lot of support, and then finding clients that just were really generous with me, and that gave me the work to do, and then candidates that were willing to trust me with their career and willing to partner with me. So at the end of the day, I'm very dependent on other people for what I do. I control very little. But I guess at the end, what makes a recruiter successful or not I think a lot of recruiters in this business look at it as a very transactional business. They see a placement as I quickly establish if a candidate is a good fit. I send them to a client. I walk them through the interview process. I negotiate an offer. I move on to the next candidate. And I see the temptation to do that. But now at this point in my career, I look at everything as a friendship almost first. So as crazy as it sounds, is anytime I talk to a client or candidate, I first want to be friends with them. I want to establish a relationship. I like to be buddies. Though it doesn't always work that way, but in a lot of ways it does. And I think that that establishes trust. And when people believe that my end goal is not necessarily making money at the end of the day, but to find a good balance on helping them get what they need, helping my clients get what they need, and making a good match, at the end of the day, it all works out. And so that, I guess, is what I would attribute any success that I've had to.
Right. Well, that's really evident, and as I've gotten to know you too. And you started Stone Arch Services in 2014.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And so tell me a little bit about what led you to starting Stone Arch Services,
Yeah.
and then there's people that don't know what it is. So tell us a little bit about Stone Arch.
Sure. Well, in 2013, I was working for a local consulting company, IT staff augmentation company here in town. And at that point, I was living up in Plymouth. And my wife, Sonia, who is a senior director of HR, also in kind of the software industry, we lived in a big place up in Plymouth, and we had a big yard and a lot of house to clean. We don't have kids, and we were in like this 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom place. And we decided it would be fun to have an adventure and consolidate kind of all at the same time. So we decided we'd move downtown. And so we made a big move in January of 2013. We sold our house, and in April we moved into a condo down by the Stone Arch Bridge. And it was really exciting, a super fun time in our lives. And kind of corresponding with that, I had started to feel like, I've been in the business for 10 years. I really think that I can make a go of it on my own. And at that time, I had a very supportive boss who owned the consulting company I worked with. And I went to him in the spring of 2014, and I just said, I think I want to take a crack at this on my own, and I want to focus on full-time perm placement. And we had the kind of relationship where he was very supportive of me, actually helped me financially launch my business to a certain extent, and then allowed me to continue to partner with him on some of his needs for the first 6 months or so. And so that's when kind of Stone Arch Services was launched. When I came up with the name, it's not all that original. I do live next to the Stone Arch Bridge, but I kind of wanted to establish myself as somebody local, because for good or bad, I've decided that the local Twin Cities market is where I'm going to hang my hat, and I want to be an expert on this market. So there are companies that are much more proficient than I am at recruiting outside of the Twin Cities. But I've chosen to be the top guy in the Twin Cities. I want to be the guy that knows our local market and our local candidates. And so I feel like I've been really successful doing that. So Stone Arch Services is a company that is based almost exclusively on a full-time permanent IT placement here in a 20 square mile radius of the two downtowns. So if you're a company that is looking for somebody that's in a very difficult to find technical niche, and I focus on what you'd call primarily senior level technical contributor roles. The typical salary of people I place is probably $100,000 to $150,000. So people that are advanced in their career and they have a really strong technical specialty. And right now I place probably 30 to 35 people a year with local companies, and that's me doing it all by myself. I go and establish the client relationships by myself, and I recruit the candidates. I don't have a staff. My awesome wife, Sonia, does keep my books for me, which is super helpful. But as far as the recruiting and the administration and setting up interviews and doing all that kind of stuff, I'm kind of a one-man show, and I really like it that way. And my clients seem to appreciate that. And I kind of have a high personal touch then.
Yeah, and there are, you talk about your business, and there are a lot of stigmas around the recruiting industry, and
Yep.
in companies like yours or companies that you've worked for in the past. how do you see Stone Arch as an augmentation of that stigma? And you talked about one earlier about developing meaningful relationships,
Yeah.
right? But what are there a few other examples you have?
Well, and the tough part about that is everybody says that they develop meaningful relationships, and everybody says that they're a relationship person. I guess the proof is in the pudding, right? And I'm really into data. And so, for instance, when a client hires me or is thinking about hiring me, I like to give them specific examples of placements I've made exactly in their field or with exactly the skill set they need. I like to give them references. I like to talk about, areas of commonality. And you're right. I think that recruiters in general sometimes will have the stigma of being used car salesmen, that they're all about just getting a fee. And you know what? There is some of that. But like in any field, there are people that are good and there are people that are not so good. And I think that, again, like in any field, the minority of people that aren't so good give a really bad reputation to the people that do a good job and really want to have a positive impact. And so I guess I just use my history as a data point, and the wonderful people that I've worked with, and the great testimonials that I have, and the great references and friends that I have in this industry as evidence when I'm talking to people of why they should trust me.
Yeah, and you mentioned these relationships you have personally. Not only it's kind of rare, you have the relationship with the customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have the deep relationship with the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it brings up the question of, a lot of consulting firms have their own business development departments, right? And the recruiters don't really deal with business development piece, but you're kind of doing it all. Talk a little bit about your business development strategy. I mean, you're a word of mouth kind of person. You rely a lot on relationships. But talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. In fact, to be honest, this podcast would be an example of about as aggressive as I've gotten in a marketing campaign piece for my business. I am very word of mouth. And I would say that since I started my business, I've done almost zero cold calling. My first boss said something very important to me when I started out in this industry, and he said, if you can stick it out for 10 to 15 years, business will come to you and you won't have to go get it, per se. Not to say that I don't appreciate it and I'm not grateful and that I don't need people to give me business, but at this point, just based on the volume of work that I've done and the number of connections that I've established, most of my business comes to me through either referral, a candidate that I've worked with in the past that gets promoted to a manager that takes another job to be a director or a VP and liked working with me, comes back to me and asks me to help them out. And so I would say that literally 99% of the business that I have today is based on prior relationships.
That's really cool. And you talk about, what are some of the encounters you have with people after you've placed them? I mean, do they always come back to you say it's not transactional, and they come back to you and they say, Steve, I'm really liking it, or are you the one that's reaching out to them saying, hey, how's it going? I think that's a personal touch that a lot of people don't often experience when they're placed by a recruiter.
Yeah, and to be honest, having placed, like I said, around 600 people over this 15-year period, it's very difficult to stay in contact with all 600 people.
Of course.
But I would say that there are at least 10% of those 600 that I am in pretty regular contact with, and I've developed some really nice personal relationships with. A good case in point. So Sonia and I happen to go to a local church here in town called Wooddale, and we go to a branch that meets in the Music Box Theater. Just to show you how tight kind of the communities are. So in my church, I have 2 clients that go to church with me right now. One owns a local managed services company, and the other one is the CEO of a software company that my wife Sonia actually is a senior HR consultant for. The guy that owns the managed services company, terrific guy. He's used me for 3 placements, and the last placement was a guy that when I was recruiting him, we were talking on the phone, and it turned out that he actually was best friends with a guy that went to school with my brother at Appleton West High School in Wisconsin, and they both got full scholarships for football out at North Dakota State University. And oh, by the way, ended up that he went to high school with my brother's wife's sister in Bismarck,
Wow.
North Dakota. And we just really hit it off. And within a week of me placing him at this managed services company, I had him over with a bunch of close guy friends to watch a Packers game. So, I kind of put myself out there. A lot of guys wouldn't do that. But like I said, the friendship piece is really important to me. And so that doesn't happen, obviously, with every case. But it happens more than you'd think. And it's really fun. It makes things fun for me.
And certainly fun you're having too, because you're doing a lot of placements each year.
Yep.
You said you average about 30 to 35 placements.
Yep.
Share with us a few areas in the Minneapolis area that you're seeing jobs become available. I mean, the job market is really good right now, obviously. But,
Yeah.
what are some areas that you're seeing an influx in job availability?
So I would say the biggest kind of change that's occurred since the recession, and let's call the recession 2009 to 2012, is coming through that companies learned to live a lot leaner and meaner. And we've entered what I'd call the age of hyper specialization. So companies aren't looking for generalists, they're looking for specialists, specifically in technology related fields. And so there are some roles that I get asked for today that didn't really even exist in a formal sense 5 years ago. Probably the biggest example of that would be DevOps. The whole DevOps space has just exploded. And even with the implementation at a lot of companies of agile methodology, which has historically been more directed towards software, now you see DevOps employing infrastructure as code, and they're taking kind of more of a software-esque approach and implementing agile with infrastructure sided. And so now DevOps engineers are, kind of the official gap bridgers between development and infrastructure, whereas 5-10 years ago, they were more systems administrators, and maybe they were doing virtualization, and now they've gotten into cloud and continuous integration and deployment and building, containerization. And so a lot of companies, I'd say right now, that's probably my most requested role is DevOps cloud engineer. Second to that, I would say that just a lot of kind of UI-sided development, and because JavaScript changes a lot, you have a lot of people that are looking for like your Angular 7 wizards and your React and your React Native mobile application developers. And so that's why you see a lot of boot camps here in town really springing up and kind of focusing on that type of development. It's considered kind of sexy. It's very visible. And so because most web applications have a front end, you have a lot of need for people to kind of sexify it and make it look good and functional. And so that would be probably another really in-demand area is kind of front-end web-sided development too.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of different areas, right, in which you recruit for.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we have people on, so the point of our podcast is to highlight people in the Minnesota area and the Minneapolis region that are contributing to our culture and our society and the workforce, right? And so that's why we asked you to come in today. And also it's, a chance for you to kind of evangelize on your company's behalf too. So if people are interested in learning more about your services, or they something resonated with them about a DevOps engineer or something, how could they get in touch with you?
Sure. So I have a company website. It's stonearchservices.com, just all one strung together word, just as it sounds. On the website, you'll see it's a very simple website. I just basically want to allow them to get to know me a little bit. So there's an About Me page. There's a page for candidates. There's a page for employers. It'll have all my contact information, my cell number. I'm a very accessible guy. Like I said, I'm kind of a one-man show. I love my job, so I really don't make a distinction between day, evening, and weekend. People can call me anytime, and I'm always excited. Again, whether it results in a business transaction, I'm excited just to get to know people, do networking. I'll help people in any way that they find that could be helpful, whether it's market intel or they want to know about a certain company. So for any of those reasons, I welcome anybody getting in touch with me.
And just because we like to bring personal elements in, tell us a little bit about a few hobbies you have outside of work.
Yeah, so I would be called kind of a diehard cyclist.
I was hoping you would talk a little bit about
cycling is my passion. I played high school and college basketball, and I continued to play basketball in leagues until my early 30s. I started to have some back problems. I actually gained quite a bit of weight. In fact, one of the things I'm the most proud of is I'm 6'5". I kind of had ballooned up to about 280 pounds, close to that at one point. And I was challenged by my parents to get into shape. And in 6 months, I lost 80 pounds and got down to around 200 pounds. And I really started to focus on biking. I really liked it. And so I'd say over the last 15 years or so, since I've lost that weight, I have really focused on cycling and the cycling community here in town. I'm really involved at the St. Louis Park Lifetime, and then a good friend of mine owns Maple Grove Cycling, which is a big trek dealer up in Maple Grove, and I'm involved at the shop and at the club. I do a lot of group riding, and I like to evangelize just the cycling culture whenever I can. It's been really great for me.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for chatting with us about Stone Arch today.
My pleasure.
We're not done yet. We're done with the business part, I guess.
All right.
We're gonna play a little bit. We're gonna play a little game.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the part where we like to let our shirt down a little bit. And have a little fun.
All right.
And
Don't let yours down too much.
I won't. Trust me,
right.
I won't. And so the way this will work is there's 3 questions.
Yep.
And they're all Minnesota focused.
All right.
And for everyone that you get right, we'll make a donation to the House of Charity, which, if you don't know, is a local nonprofit that helps those experiencing homelessness achieve independence. And
That's awesome.
It's an organization that's close to Troust's heart and mission.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have a little fun and hopefully help them out.
Awesome.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
All right. Now these are probably going to be easy for you, being that you're a Minnesotan.
Okay.
But here we go.
Is it going to be 80s music trivia from Minneapolis?
I didn't go down that road today.
All right.
Number 1. What is the Minnesota state mushroom?
Wow. Is there such a thing?
Oh, yes. People go hunting for these.
So it's a variety of mushrooms specific to the state of Minnesota.
Yes. It's a...
So here's the
deal.
Well,
it's not... Now, you can find it in Iowa. I don't know if you can find it in Wisconsin. I know in college we hunt for them in Iowa. But it's the official state of Minnesota mushroom. And
wow,
it's very expensive if you find it.
All right.
It starts with an M.
Is it like of the truffle variety?
Similar.
You eat it?
Yes, you eat it.
Okay.
People will pay lots of money.
Wow. So I'll tell you what, I don't think I could name a single variety of mushroom. It just is not my area.
How about if I told you it was a morel mushroom? Do you know morels?
I know the boots. Oh, that's Merrill. I got you.
No, morel mushrooms. They are. That's all right. We'll still give that one to you.
Okay.
They're a delicacy.
All
so
right.
if you haven't had a morel mushroom, I highly encourage it.
Okay.
All right. Number 2. In Minnesota, you can find some of the oldest what found on Earth. Now, that's a very vague question.
Yes.
But they are the oldest piece of sediment, if I can say it that way. Don't think too hard about it.
I was going to say lake, but then you said sediment, which is at the bottom of lakes.
Right. So think more mountainous or climbing. You might have one of these. Some climbing walls are made out of these in gyms.
Oh, like rocks or boulders?
Rocks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, see? There you go.
It's fantastic.
All right. Now, this one I know you can get.
Okay.
I need you to name all 5 lakes that have shoreline along the Chain of Lakes bike trail in the cities.
Oh. So, Lake of the Isles.
Yep.
Lake Calhoun.
Yep.
Lake Harriet.
Yep.
Lake Nokomis,
That wasn't one listed, but it might go by there.
Cedar Lake.
Cedar Lake.
So I'm missing one.
You're missing one.
Hiawatha?
No. Think more sweet. Think more dessert like.
Oh, and actually, I guess Calhoun is now Bede-Makaska.
Yes.
If we're being specific.
That is right.
Wow.
You become this before you're a full Girl Scout.
Oh, is there a Brownie Lake?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So according to
All
the
right.
Minnesota, outdoor website, that's the lakes it goes by.
Okay.
Brownie Lake, Cedar Lake, Lake of the Isles, Bede-Makaska, and Harriet.
Wow.
So
All right.
there you go. I guess you'll have to go search for Brownie. I don't even know where it is.
Yeah.
I need to look that up.
Interesting.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for
Yeah.
playing with us.
Yeah.
And,
problem.
at Trouse, we get to see you a lot because you're here at Fuel Collective.
And I love that.
And we get to partner with you sometimes, which
Yes.
is fun. But it's really cool to hear your story, and I think a lot of people have enjoyed listening today.
Thank you
And,
so much.
we're just excited to see how you grow your business even further.
Excellent.
So
Thank
thanks
you
for-
so much, Dietrich.
Yeah, thanks for being with us.
All right.